Hey, did anyone order pizza? Because we've got some weird lights in the sky that definitely aren't DoorDash, shouted Dexter Marshall, wiping grease from his hands as he peered through the frosted windows of Research Station Echo 7. The maintenance technician had been elbow-deep in the facility's ventilation system when the first anomalies appeared. Shimmering curtains of emerald and violet that definitely weren't your average aurora borealis. The other 3 occupants of the remote Antarctic station barely looked up from their screens. After 6 months of isolation, it took more than a light show to get their attention. Dr. Chen continued calibrating the atmospheric sensors. Dr. Rodriguez kept typing away at her climate models, and Dr. Patterson was probably still asleep despite it being 3 p.m. Seriously, folks? Dexter waved his wrench for emphasis. Either the ozone layer is having a dance party, or something very weird is happening up there. And weird is technically above my pay grade, so... Dr. Chen finally glanced up, pushing his thick-rimmed glasses higher on his nose. Marshall, unless the anomaly is affecting our heating system, which you still haven't fixed. The entire station trembled. Not the usual wind rattling the walls shake they were used to, but a deep vibration that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Every screen in the facility flickered, then went dark, only to reactivate showing the same message. Greetings, inhabitants of Sol 3. We are the Concordat of enlightened species. Your evaluation begins now. Well, Dexter muttered, dropping his wrench with a clang that echoed through the suddenly silent station. That's definitely not DoorDash. The message continued scrolling. For centuries, we have prepared for this moment. We have studied your species. We have trained our warriors. We have perfected our strategy. You have 20 minutes to prepare your defenses. Dr. Rodriguez let out a nervous laugh. This has to be a hack, right? Some bored teenager with too much time and processing power. The sky outside erupted in a cascade of geometric patterns as massive ships began materializing in perfect formation. Each vessel was a masterpiece of engineering, all gleaming angles and pulsing energy fields, arranged in what was clearly a carefully choreographed deployment pattern. Dexter picked up his wrench again, gripping it like a lifeline. You know what's funny? All those centuries of preparation, and they decided to announce their presence to a broken-down research station in the middle of nowhere, which, by the way, still has a busted heating system because someone kept interrupting my maintenance schedule with urgent coffee maker repairs. The final message appeared. Your time starts now. Anyone else think it's ironic, Dexter said, already heading for the communications room, that the first humans to deal with this are probably the least prepared people on the planet? I mean, my biggest achievement today was fixing the toaster. The countdown began, and humanity's 20 minutes of frantic preparation started ticking away, led by a maintenance technician who just wanted to finish his shift and go home. The Concordat's next transmission came as a holographic projection that filled the research station's common area. The being that appeared looked like what would happen if you asked an AI to draw a chess piece that had achieved enlightenment. All smooth curves and floating geometric patterns arranged in a vaguely humanoid shape. For 347 of your solar cycles, we have observed your species. The alien's voice resonated through the station's speakers, somehow managing to sound both melodious and condescending at the same time. We have studied your warfare, your technology, your social structures. Every possible scenario has been simulated. Every response has been anticipated. Every counter-strategy has been prepared for. Dexter, who had managed to get through to the Global Defense Council on an ancient backup radio system, muttered under his breath, "Anyone else getting person who peaked in high school vibes from these guys?" The hologram continued its monologue, displaying evidence of their technological superiority. Ships that could bend space-time like a paperclip. Weapons that could reorganize matter at the atomic level. Shields that could absorb the energy of a supernova. With each revelation, their systems interfaced with Earth's networks, proving their claims with demonstrations that made humanity's most advanced technology look like stone tools in comparison. "We have dedicated generations to perfecting our combat forms," the alien announced, as the hologram shifted to show warriors in crystalline armor performing impossibly complex battle maneuvers. "Our youngest recruit has spent more time in combat simulation than your entire species has spent in space exploration." Dr. Chen, who had been frantically analyzing the data streaming across his terminal, spoke up. "Their technology. It's all perfectly optimized. Every system is running at theoretical maximum efficiency. That's not just advanced, that's beyond obsessive. Each member of our invasion force," the alien continued, either not hearing or choosing to ignore the human's comments, "has memorized exactly 2,947,621 combat scenarios. We have calculated a 99.99998% probability of victory." "That's great and all," Dexter interrupted, still fiddling with the radio. "But has anyone ever told you that you talk like a software manual having an existential crisis?" The alien's form flickered slightly, the first break in its perfect composure. "Your primitive attempts at humor are noted and irrelevant. You now have 15 minutes to prepare for our assault. If you surrender now, we will ensure your species' integration into the Concordat is mostly painless." "Quick question," Dexter called out. "In all those millions of combat scenarios, did you ever simulate what would happen if humans just didn't do what you expected? Because I've got to tell you, that's kind of our specialty." The hologram stuttered again. "Your question is irrelevant. All possible variables have been accounted for. Resistance is—" "Let me guess," Dexter interrupted again. "Futile? You know, for a species that spent centuries studying us, you sure do lean heavily on the classics." As the alien's image dissolved in what looked suspiciously like a huff, Dr. Rodriguez turned to Dexter. "Are you trying to antagonize the hyper-advanced alien species?" "Nah," he grinned, finally getting through on the radio. "I'm just buying time while proving a point. Did anyone else notice their perfect hologram glitched every time we did something that wasn't in their predictions?" While alien ships assembled in perfect geometric patterns above every major city on Earth, humanity responded in its usual organized fashion, which is to say, with absolute chaos. Social media exploded with everything from doomsday predictions to alien memes. The stock market crashed, then somehow rallied because someone convinced investors that alien invasion was good for cryptocurrency. 3 different pizza chains launched end-of-the-world specials. Dexter watched CNN's breaking news coverage on the station's flickering screen, where a panel of experts debated whether the alien's ship design indicated a preference for minimalist architecture, or just a lack of imagination. "You know what's funny?" he said to his colleagues while adjusting the radio frequency. "They spent centuries planning this invasion, but we're probably going to derail it just by being ourselves." The emergency broadcast system finally crackled to life. General Hayes of the Global Defense Council was speaking. "To all military and civilian personnel, we are implementing Protocol Omega. This is not a drill. I repeat, this is not a drill. Though honestly, we never actually drilled for this specific scenario, because who would have thought we'd get a 20-minute warning?" Dr. Patterson, who had finally woken up and was mainlining coffee like it was the last day on Earth, which, to be fair, it might have been, squinted at their own readings. "These alien ships, they're arranged in perfect hexagonal formations. Every angle is exactly 60 degrees. Every distance is precisely calculated. It's like they're following some cosmic choreography." "That's it." Dexter snapped his fingers, nearly dropping the radio. "They're not just prepared, they're over-prepared. They've got the universe's worst case of analysis paralysis. Remember when Dr. Chen spent 3 weeks calculating the optimal coffee-to-water ratio and ended up drinking energy drinks instead?" "That was different," Dr. Chen protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Also, I eventually found the perfect ratio." The radio crackled again as the Global Defense Council patched through representatives from various fields. Military strategists, scientists, gamers who had spent too much time playing alien invasion simulators, and even a few chaos theorists who seemed way too excited about the whole situation. "Listen up," General Hayes barked through the static. "We've got 15 minutes left and we need solutions. These aliens have spent centuries preparing for every reasonable response we might have." So, by process of elimination, what's our best strategy? Be unreasonable, Dexter replied into the radio, surprising himself with his own boldness. They've planned for everything that makes sense, so let's do what humans do best, something that makes absolutely no sense at all. There was a moment of silence on the radio before someone laughed. Then another person joined in. Soon, the emergency channel was filled with the kind of laughter that comes when you realize the absurdity of your situation might just be your salvation. "Mr. Marshall," General Hayes said, and Dexter could hear the grin in his voice. "Congratulations. You're now part of humanity's emergency response team. We're patching you through to a quantum-encrypted channel. We need every out-of-the-box idea you've got, particularly from someone whose job literally involves thinking about how things can go wrong in unexpected ways." Dexter looked at his wrench, then at the alien ships visible through the window, still maintaining their perfect formation. "Well, I did spend this morning fixing a toaster that was convinced it was a microwave. I feel like that experience might be relevant here." 13 minutes until the invasion, and humanity's emergency response team had devolved into what could generously be called a brainstorming session, and more accurately described as organized chaos over quantum-encrypted channels. Ideas ranged from hack their ships with Windows Vista to challenge them to a dance-off for Earth's sovereignty. "Look," Dexter said, pacing the research station while holding his trusty wrench. "These aliens have simulated every rational response we could have. But what happens when you over-prepare for something? When you spend so long planning that you can't handle when things go off script?" Dr. Rodriguez, who had been analyzing the aliens' transmission patterns, suddenly straightened up. "They're sending everything in perfect sequences. Every signal, every movement, it's all following exact mathematical patterns. Almost like they're running on scripts," Dr. Chen finished, nearly knocking over his 7th cup of coffee. "They've automated their responses based on their simulations. They're not actually reacting in real time. They're following pre-programmed scenarios." The quantum channel erupted with voices as people started connecting the dots. A chaos theorist from MIT was practically squealing with delight. Their perfect preparation is their weakness. They've optimized themselves into a corner. 10 minutes, General Hayes reminded everyone. "Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. Marshall, you're our resident expert in things going wrong. What breaks a perfect system?" Dexter thought about every maintenance job he'd ever done, every system he'd fixed, every machine that had gone haywire in unexpected ways. "Imperfection," he said slowly. "Random variables. The digital equivalent of somebody hitting it with a wrench." "Elaborate," ordered the general. "Their whole invasion plan is like one of those perfect Rube Goldberg machines you see in videos. The ones that took months to set up and only worked after 1,000 takes. But what happens if you change something small right at the start? The whole thing falls apart." A software engineer from Silicon Valley jumped in. "We could introduce random noise into all our communications and defense systems. Not enough to shut them down, just enough to make them unpredictable." "Better yet," added a game designer, who apparently had a relevant experience in alien invasion scenarios. "We could make everything look like we're following their predicted responses, but slightly wrong, like someone trying to dance but missing every third step." 7 minutes remaining, and the plan started taking shape. Every military base began randomizing their defense patterns just enough to seem like mistakes rather than strategy. Civil defense systems were programmed to respond with carefully crafted imperfection. Civilian communications were flooded with deliberately contradictory information. 5 minutes, announced General Hayes. "Status report. Global defensive systems are now operating at precisely 91.3% efficiency, reported the military command. Just imperfect enough to look like we're trying really hard to be perfect and failing. Civilian internet is now running on what we're calling organized chaos protocols, added the cyber command. Social media is actually helping for once. Turns out humans are really good at being unpredictable when they're panicking." 3 minutes, came the update. "All units prepare for Operation Beautiful Disaster." Dexter looked at his colleagues in the research station, then at his wrench, and had one final idea. General, what if we also sent them a message? Something that would really throw them off. Make it quick, Marshal. I think, Dexter grinned, we should thank them for giving us 20 minutes to prepare. Tell them how grateful we are for the chance to optimize our response. Really lean into their whole efficiency thing. There was a moment of silence on the quantum channel before someone burst out laughing. That's brilliant, the chaos theorist exclaimed. It's like telling a chess computer you're thankful it taught you all its moves right before you flipped the board. 1 minute, General Hayes announced. Everyone in position. Remember, aim for imperfect perfection. Let's show these aliens what happens when you spend too long preparing for every possibility except the obvious one. What's the obvious one? Dr. Patterson asked, still nursing his coffee. That humans, Dexter replied, watching the alien ships begin their precisely choreographed approach, are really good at messing up perfect plans. At exactly 0800 hours Universal Coordinated Time, the Concordat launched their attack with the precision of a Swiss watch designed by obsessive-compulsive supercomputers. Their ships moved in perfect synchronization, each vessel following trajectories calculated to 12 decimal places. Energy weapons charged with exact power outputs, targeting systems locked onto predetermined strategic locations, and their entire invasion force moved like a single, perfectly choreographed dance ensemble. That's when humanity executed Operation Beautiful Disaster, which was less like a choreographed dance and more like everyone at a wedding reception trying to do the Macarena from half-remembered YouTube tutorials. Is it working? Dr. Rodriguez asked, watching as Earth's military forces responded with what looked like organized incompetence, but was actually carefully calculated chaos. Oh, it's working all right, Dexter replied, monitoring the alien communications they could intercept. Their ships keep pausing for microseconds, like they're buffering while trying to process what we're doing. The aliens had planned for Earth to deploy its nuclear arsenal. They hadn't planned for those missiles to be launched in what appeared to be random patterns, but was actually based on winning lottery numbers from the past decade. They'd prepared for our most advanced fighter jets. They hadn't prepared for those jets to execute combat maneuvers inspired by cat videos. Their formation is starting to slip, Dr. Chen reported, watching the perfect hexagonal patterns of alien ships develop tiny irregularities. It's like watching a supercomputer try to play Calvin ball. The Concordat's response came through all channels. Your tactics are inefficient. Your deployment lacks optimization. Please adjust your defensive patterns to match predicted scenarios. Did they just say please? Dexter laughed. They're actually trying to get us to fight properly. Quick, somebody send them a thank you note for their feedback with at least 3 spelling mistakes. Global Defense Command was already reporting success. The alien ships, programmed to respond to specific countermeasures, were struggling to adapt to humanity's seemingly random but secretly orchestrated chaos. Their perfect formations started showing gaps as their automated systems tried to categorize and respond to actions that defied their centuries of strategic analysis. Status report from the European theater, General Hayes announced over the quantum channel. They've got alien ships spinning in circles because someone programmed our defense grid to respond with moves from Just Dance 2024. Asian Command reporting in, another voice added. Our decoy targets are working. They can't seem to handle that we painted giant targets on some buildings, but reinforced the seemingly unprotected ones. The alien's next transmission sounded distinctly frustrated. Your species' military response shows a concerning lack of strategic coherence. Please refer to standard combat protocols. Did they just try to rules lawyer an invasion? Dexter asked incredulously. Quick, somebody send them a link to Earth's terms and conditions. Make sure it's the iTunes one. Nobody ever reads those. Through the research station's windows, they could see the alien ships above Antarctica starting to move in increasingly erratic patterns, their perfect formation dissolving as they tried to adapt to humanity's calculated randomness. It was like watching the world's most advanced chess computer trying to play against someone who had replaced all the pieces with rubber ducks and was following rules made up by a 5-year-old. I think, Dexter grinned, watching another alien ship spin in confusion as its targeting systems failed to process a defense satellite broadcasting nothing but cat memes. We might have found the sweet spot between chaos and strategy. They literally can't compute what we're doing because they spent too long preparing for us to make sense. The moment everything changed came exactly 17 minutes into the battle, when the Concordate's perfectly optimized invasion force encountered something their centuries of preparation hadn't accounted for: human pattern recognition applied backward. Dr. Chen, who had been analyzing the aliens' response patterns, suddenly started laughing so hard he knocked over his 12th cup of coffee. They're trapped in their own optimization. Every time we do something unpredictable, they try to force it into one of their pre-calculated scenarios. But since none of their scenarios fit, they keep cycling through their entire database looking for a match. Dexter watched the alien ships through the station window, their movements becoming increasingly jerky as their AI tried to process humanity's strategic nonsense. It's like when you tell a GPS to reroute, but keep turning the wrong way on purpose. Eventually it has an existential crisis. The quantum channel crackled with excited reports from around the globe. The alien ships were starting to move like malfunctioning screensavers, their perfect formations dissolving into chaos as they tried to find patterns in humanity's deliberate lack of patterns. Their main command ship is requesting an emergency consultation, General Hayes announced, barely containing his amusement. Apparently, they want to lodge a formal complaint about our violation of established combat protocols. They're citing a rulebook they wrote 3 centuries ago. The aliens' next transmission bordered on desperate. Warning: your species' combat methodology does not conform to any known strategic doctrine. Please cease tactical innovations and return to standard warfare protocols. Did they just try to report us to the Cosmic Manager? Dexter asked, grinning. Quick, somebody tell them we'd like to speak to the Galactic Supervisor. That's when Dr. Rodriguez made the breakthrough that would be studied in military academies for generations to come. They're ships. Look at how they're moving. They're trying to predict where we'll be based on where we were. But since we're basing our movements on their predictions of our movements, they're stuck in a feedback loop, Dr. Chen finished, like 2 mirrors facing each other, but with alien invasion tactics. The revelation spread across Earth's defense networks. Every human force began targeting their responses not at where the aliens were, but at where the aliens were predicting humans would predict the aliens would be. It was like playing chess against someone who had memorized every possible game, by deliberately making moves that weren't actually chess moves. The alien command ship started broadcasting on all frequencies. Error, tactical paradox detected, unable to resolve logical conflict, requesting immediate protocol clarification. Should we send them a response? Someone asked over the quantum channel. Oh, yes, Dexter grinned, picking up his wrench. Tell them we're very sorry, but their invasion is experiencing technical difficulties. Have they tried turning it off and on again? The Concordate's invasion force finally crashed. Not in the literal sense, but in the way a computer crashes when you ask it to divide by 0. Their perfectly optimized battle fleet hung motionless in the sky, their systems completely overwhelmed by humanity's strategic chaos theory in action. The alien command ship's final transmission said it all. Critical error, unable to process current tactical reality, simulation parameters exceeded, requesting complete mission reset. Did we just give an alien invasion force the blue screen of death? Dexter asked, watching as the ships above the research station started powering down their weapons. The Concordate's Supreme Commander appeared in hologram form, looking considerably less geometrically perfect than before. This is unprecedented. 3 centuries of preparation, millions of simulated scenarios, perfectly optimized battle strategies, all rendered irrelevant by your species' ability to wing it, Dexter suggested helpfully. To throw pasta at the wall and see what sticks? To play interdimensional chess with a pool noodle? We request an immediate cessation of hostilities, the commander announced, their voice carrying the unmistakable tone of someone who had just watched their dissertation get shredded. Our strategic databases require complete recalibration. We must understand how you achieved victory with only 20 minutes of preparation. That's the neat part, Dr. Rodriguez chimed in. We didn't really prepare. We just did what humans do best, adapt and improvise. The global celebration that followed was exactly what you'd expect when humanity discovers its superpower is basically being unpredictable. Times Square filled with people doing deliberately uncoordinated dance moves. The French projected memes onto the Eiffel Tower. Someone in Australia organised a continent-wide game of Simon Says where nobody followed the rules, but somehow everyone won. The Concordate's ships departed Earth's orbit with what could only be described as mechanical bewilderment, leaving behind a formal request for humanity to please document their tactical innovations so they could be properly analysed. Earth's unified response was a video compilation of every major military force doing the chicken dance, set to Never Gonna Give You Up. Back at Research Station Echo 7, Dexter finally got around to fixing the heating system. "You know what's funny?" he said, tightening the last bolt. "They spent 300 years preparing to fight humans, but they never actually learned what makes us human." "And what's that?" Dr. Chen asked. "The ability to look at a perfect plan and say, 'Nah, I've got a better idea,' with absolutely no evidence to support that claim." Dexter grinned, patting his trusty wrench. "Also, the fact that some of our best innovations come from people just trying to get through their workday so they can go home and watch cat videos." As news channels worldwide tried to make sense of humanity's first interstellar victory, the Global Defense Council issued its official after-action report. It consisted of 3 words. "Well, that worked.